Welcome back to Simplifying the State, the podcast where we break down politics so you don't have to try to figure out why the Trump administration is demanding states undo efforts they've made to send out full SNAP benefits. As always, I'm Adam Watson.
I'm Nicholas Perrin.
And I'm Joe Garfinkel.
All right, now before we start, if you would be so kind as to rate us and follow the podcast wherever you are listening, as well as share it with anyone you think would enjoy it, such as friends, family, or a random person you see at Chick-fil-A. Okay, so recently there were elections. The Democrats did fairly well across the board in pretty much every election that there was. Today we're basically going to be talking about how this could affect the Democrats moving forward, how Republicans might pivot due to these elections, how Zorhan Mamdani might impact New York, and then also how this could affect students. So I just basically want to start off with how this could affect the Democrats moving forward. So, Drew, what takeaways from this election do you think the Democrats could gain? Do you think they could learn anything from how, campaigned or, the issues they focused on?
Well, so I feel like there's a shift away from like the Republican Party right now. A lot of people, especially the disenfranchised people who, for example, lost SNAP benefits on the Republican side, may be thinking, hey, maybe this isn't the best for me. And maybe the Democrat Party is more enticing. So I feel like if the Democrat Party leans into that, like supporting the people, they could potentially get more traction.
And I think like what you said, Drew, about directly aiding the people in terms of like housing prices, because those are through the roof right now. And that's like a big reason that people said that they voted for Democratic candidates this time. And also generally like fighting Republicans where it hurts. Like, again, issues on the economy and not as much on the migration, because that isn't very popular even with like members of the Republican Party right now. Most people don't care about immigration as much as they do about the economy right now.
Yeah, I think you definitely see it in polls where people are asked to rank things they care about most when it comes to elections. You'll see the economy is almost always ranked number one. And I think the Democrats can learn some lessons from that. I also think they can look at Mamdani's campaign, just sort of tracking it from when he launched his campaign in the primary to him winning. He made it very clear that his campaign was focused on the economy. That was the center point of his campaign. Affordability, freezing rent, making public transit free. Those were the center points of his campaign. And he managed to go from around like 2 to 3% in the polls in, I think it was like April or something, to now winning the mayoral race in New York. And I think Democrat candidates, can learn something from that. As we discussed earlier, on an earlier episode, the Democrats shouldn't try to emulate every single thing from the New York race in every race, because there are a lot of differences between the New York and the rest of the country, but that's something they could focus on is the economy. Drew, what do you think?
Yeah, in addition to that, he's also a charismatic guy, Like he's a New York guy. He's from New York, and he campaigned on that, that he has the interests of the people. So I feel like that's also a takeaway, like being down to earth, being like present and not being just some politician. So I think that's something he did well in his campaign.
Yeah, and adding on to what you said about like the charismatic leader thing, I feel like that's a lot of what Democrats are kind of lacking right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reason like Trump and the Republican Party have been doing like relatively well, like especially in 2024, where they got a trifecta in the federal government. Yeah, the charisma that like Trump possesses and the rest of his party like kind of lean on is imperative. And if the Democrats manage to get like some of that for themselves, like in the case of Zoran, like we saw how well that did. Zoran won with like a little bit over a majority in the New York election. So yeah, if Democrats just manage to get some more charismatic leaders in who focus on the people like in their respective like constituencies or states or even the entire country, I think that would be the best course of action.
Yeah. Speaking a little bit about New York, how do you guys think a Mamdani mayoral term could affect the city? Like, what do you guys think is going to happen with that?
I don't live in New York, so I don't know. The closest thing is I do have family in Rochester, and like my mom was from New York. So I can't really speak too much on it, but I feel like if he plays things right, good things could happen from it. I think increasing taxes on the rich people of New York won't like cause them to leave because people in New York like New York, well, more or less. So I feel like he may be successful in his goals of free buses, just like what he said he'd do. I feel like he could achieve this. What do you guys think?
I like on the thing where people say like rich people in New York won't leave New York because they like it. I think that's a little like naive in my opinion because there were a lot of billionaires or millionaires in Norway. I don't remember what year it was, but it was like a couple years ago. And Norway raised their like elite tax rate by like 1%. And that caused like everyone to leave Norway, which is kind of surprising because they're a petrostate and, you know, the billionaires would want to stay in that petrostate in order to get favors, for example. So I think it's a little naive to say the really rich people won't leave New York City. I'm sure not all of them will, of course, but yeah, I guess time will tell. Adam, what do you think?
Yeah, real quick, could you define petrostate for the people who don't know?
Yeah. So a petrostate is a country who primarily relies upon oil for their like budget and GDP. Like, for example, Russia is a petrostate, Saudi Arabia, one of the most popular, or I guess not popular, but, you know, producing petrostates, and Norway also a petrostate.
Oh, yeah, I think Mamdani will probably have a lot of eyes on him, especially from the Republicans. And I think they will definitely be trying to point out if any issues he has. I think they'll be really laser focused on New York and trying to use that as an example of why his brand of democratic socialism does not work in America. And I think they'll be definitely looking for any thing they can, really point out to suggest that it won't work on a broader scale. But I don't think the things he was promising were too out of the box crazy that he could not get them done within, I think it was 4 years he has till the next election. But I think he could accomplish this, and if he does accomplish this, I think it'll be really good for candidates similar to Mamdani who want to sort of emulate his democratic socialist policies in other parts of the country. Given all these elections, how do you guys think Republicans are going to pivot given we're now less than 1 year away from the midterms? How do you guys think the Republicans are going to respond and sort of pivot their platform to this?
Well, given what I've
So-
seen so far, like especially from like JD Vance, I think JD Vance argued that the reason people did not vote for like Republicans in these recent elections was because they hadn't been able to see like the long-term effects of Trump's economic plan. And according to Vance, he thinks that by the time like the midterms roll around, the American people will start to see some of those economic advantages and will vote more favorably towards the Republicans. Of course, there are a lot of other people who don't think that, but I also haven't seen like a unified Republican plan on what to do in like light of all these victories. Drew, do you have anything to say?
My thoughts on that is the Republican Party leaned too much into like Donald Trump and MAGA, and now like it's not as effective in my opinion. People are kind of like disliking the MAGA movement more, or I hope at least. So I feel there's going to be a shift in the Republican Party over the next couple of years. Do you guys
Yeah.
And
think
like, do you
there's
think
some
it's going
truth
to be
to
like
that?
a shift towards the center or just
Like
shift
a
away
shift
from
away
Trump?
from MAGA?
Yeah. Uh, yeah, I think so. After the election, Trump sort of put out on social media that the reason the Republicans didn't do well was because he himself was not on the ballot anywhere. And I think that there probably is a little bit of truth behind that. I think he really galvanizes his base of MAGA supporters to come out and vote for Republicans. But I think the Republicans have made a really crucial mistake here, and that they've sort of created their party around Donald Trump and his MAGA movement. And they don't really seem to have a plan for what to do post Trump. Because, I mean, unless he tries to run for another office or, tries to violate the 22nd Amendment and run for a third term, he's not going to be on the ballot in 26 or in 2028 or in 2030 or in 2032. And so I think the Republicans are going to have a real issue in getting people to come out, especially the people who really came out for Trump, in those elections when Trump is no longer within the Republican Party. And I
Yeah,
think we've sort of seen this now.
Who could replace Trump? Like, he's such a big name guy. Like, where do we go from here? Like, what's after him for the Republican Party?
Well, like mostly from what I've heard from people and Trump himself, honestly, there are really two contenders that could run in 2028, like in place of him. And those are JD Vance and Marco Rubio. And they both have their drawbacks. I don't think either of them are particularly popular. I remember at the beginning of the Trump's presidency, JD Vance was extremely unpopular. But I think because of the proximity with Trump, he's been able to boost his popularity a little bit, and Marco Rubio hasn't really been making headlines as much. So I feel like he would be not as good as a contender just because of name recognition.
Right. And I think this is probably something that, we could have a whole another episode about. I think we actually did do an episode earlier about the future of the Republican Party. So if anyone's interested in listening to that, it's on Spotify. So one more thing before we go, how do you guys think this could affect students, here in Clayton and, maybe across Missouri and across the country? How could this affect high schoolers?
Well, high schoolers, I mean, they're going to be able to vote fairly soon. And high schoolers right now, the majority of them will be able to vote for the presidential election in 2028. Some of them are lucky enough to vote for the midterms. I'm not, sad face. But yeah, I mean, showing these Democratic victories definitely show that there's been more of a shift towards them. But I'm not sure if this will directly contribute towards more young people being in favor of the Democratic Party. In fact, it might be a little bit of a shift away because, there's a constant flip-flop between which parties do well the majority of the time, especially in modern politics. So, I don't know. Again, we'll have to see. We'll have to wait for the midterms.
I was going to say that. I don't have anything else to say. Besides party shifts, I don't think it will affect us too much. Specifically, this recent election, if I remember correctly, got passed in Missouri, besides renaming something, right?
Yeah, that was the only thing on the ballot in Clayton this election cycle was to rename the Board of Aldermen to the City Council. But
yeah,
there was
no one cares about that. Loki.
Well, no one cares about that.
Some people care about that, but it's just not as big as national a headline as these other races. But yeah, there was no real big election statewide in Missouri.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically what you guys both said, I think doesn't have a lot of impact for us here in Clayton. I think, maybe it'll give an indication to us who could win the midterms, but not much effect for Clayton here.
So I was making a hasty generalization where I said no one cares.
Right.
I'm saying I don't care, so no one. Okay, whatever.
I don't care, so therefore it's not an important.
Yeah, therefore
issue.
You don't care.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right. Thanks for listening to Simplifying the State. We'll be back next week with our next episode. Make sure to follow us on Simplifying the State on Instagram. We'll be posting stuff there, and we'll talk to you guys next time.